My name is Dana Whitfield. I'm 36, and 4 weeks ago my uncle forgot to end a live stream. It was supposed to be a quick video of the dining room before the dinner rush, just him showing off the new patio lights for the restaurant's Facebook page. He set the phone on the host stand, walked into the kitchen, and never came back to turn it off. For 40 minutes, that camera sat there recording everything, including the booth in the corner where my brother and my mother were having dessert before the doors opened. I didn't see it that night. I saw it 3 weeks later when a cousin tagged me in the comments of a clip someone had cut from it, a clip that already had 11,000 views because strangers on the internet thought it was funny. In it, my brother Tyler was leaning back in the booth telling my mother that the only reason the restaurant hadn't closed twice already was because, and I'm using his words, Dana's basically our ATM with a heartbeat, and we let her feel important about it. My mother laughed so hard she had to put her fork down. I read that comment thread standing in my own kitchen with my coat still on, and by the time I sat down, I already knew exactly what I was going to do about it. Welcome back to Success Wisdom Stories, where the quiet ones always turn out to be the strong ones, and karma never forgets an address. If you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe, because these stories only get better. If you've ever been the one quietly holding something together while everyone else got to take the credit for it, this one's for you. I need to back up, because none of this makes sense unless you understand who I actually am to that family. I'm a senior claims auditor for an insurance company in Dayton. I spend my whole career finding the one number that doesn't match the story someone is trying to tell. I'm good at my job because I don't get emotional about numbers. I just follow them until they tell the truth. People think that makes me cold. It doesn't. It just means I notice things other people don't want to notice. 5 years ago, my brother Tyler decided he was going to open an Italian restaurant. He'd worked in kitchens his whole life, never owned anything, and the bank looked at his credit and laughed him out the door. My mother, Eleanor, had some retirement savings, but not nearly enough, and she wasn't about to risk it on her son's first business. So Tyler came to me. Not for a loan, for a partner. He needed someone whose credit and savings could actually get the doors open, and in exchange, he told me I'd be a real owner, 30% of everything, my name on the paperwork, a say in how things ran. I believed him, because he's my brother and because I wanted, more than I want to admit, to be needed by my family for something other than my checkbook. I put in $28,000 on the lease deposit. I co-signed the equipment loan. When the walk-in freezer died in year 2, I covered it, $19,400, gone in one phone call. When payroll came up short 2 Christmases in a row, I covered that too, around $6,500 each time, quietly, by transferring money the night before so nobody at that restaurant would know their paycheck almost didn't clear. By my own count, I'd put just under $61,000 into that restaurant over 5 years. Tyler ran the kitchen and called himself the owner on every interview he ever gave the local paper. My mother told her church friends her son built that restaurant with his own 2 hands, which was true, and never mentioned whose hands had been holding the roof up the whole time, which was also true. I let her have that story, the same way I let everyone have whatever story made them comfortable, because keeping the peace had always felt like my job in that family, the same way auditing a claim is my job at work. I just never once ran the actual numbers on what peace was costing me. I have a habit of mistaking being useful for being loved. I figured out a long time ago that nobody in my family was going to ask how I was doing, but they would absolutely call if something needed paying for, and at some point I decided that being called was close enough to being wanted. That clip changed something in me, but not in the way you'd expect. I didn't cry. I opened a spreadsheet instead. 1 tab for every dollar I'd put in. 1 tab for every gap I'd quietly covered. And one I'd never let myself build before, a tab that just asked a simple question. On paper, in the actual partnership agreement we'd signed 5 years ago, what did I legally own? I drove to my safety deposit box the next morning and pulled the original documents, because I am the kind of person who keeps her paperwork. 30% ownership, my name listed as a managing partner, my signature right next to Tyler's on every page. Nobody had ever bothered to take that away from me because nobody had ever thought I'd remember it was there. If you've ever found out the hard way that paperwork remembers what people forget, stay with me. It gets better. And if this is already sounding familiar, drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one. So I started watching, quietly, the way I do at work when a claim doesn't add up. I requested the restaurant's quarterly financials, which I was legally entitled to as a partner and had never once asked for in 5 years. What I found wasn't just one joke at a dinner booth. It was a pattern. Tyler had been paying himself a salary as general manager on top of taking distributions, basically the owner's cut of the profit, that he'd labeled owner draws, money meant to be split 3 ways. I had never received a single distribution in 5 years. Not because the restaurant wasn't profitable. It was especially the last 2 years. I drove out to see my mother that weekend, told her I was dropping off her allergy medication, which I was. We sat on her porch and I asked her, gently, if she'd known the restaurant had been profitable. She got that bright, careful look on her face she gets when she's about to manage me instead of answer me. Don't make this complicated, Dana, she said. Tyler works so hard. You have your job. I asked if she'd seen the Livestream clip. Her face flickered, then smoothed back over. It was a joke. You take everything so personally. I asked one more question. Did she know I legally own 30% of that restaurant? She looked out at her garden and said, very quietly, I didn't think it mattered anymore. That was the moment I understood. It hadn't mattered to her because in her mind, I wasn't supposed to ever cash that ownership in. I was just supposed to keep being the reason it existed. If you've ever felt like the family member everyone counts on but nobody actually counts, you already know exactly the kind of quiet that settled into my chest on that porch. It wasn't anger yet. It was something colder and steadier than anger, the kind of calm I get right before I find the line item that breaks a whole case open. The restaurant's 5-year anniversary party was already on the calendar, 3 weeks out, at the restaurant itself, with the local paper coming to do a write-up. Tyler asked me, almost as an afterthought, to handle the invoices like I always did, and maybe say a few words since I was, in his text, basically family management. He had no idea I'd seen the clip. I didn't confront anyone over text. I called a business attorney I trust and asked her one question. As a 30% managing partner who'd never received a distribution in 5 years, what were my options? She laid it out. I could demand a formal accounting immediately, which might force a cash crunch the restaurant couldn't survive. I could walk away and let Tyler buy out my stake, which he didn't have the cash to do. Or I could address the books publicly at any partner meeting, including one that happened to coincide with an anniversary party in front of the local paper. Based on 5 years of records, she told me, you're owed somewhere around $54,000 in distributions you never received. I told her that was exactly the kind of accounting I had in mind. I prepared one folder. Inside it, the original partnership agreement with my name highlighted, a full distribution report showing exactly how much I should have received against exactly how much I had, 0. And a typed letter formally requesting my back distributions with a 60-day timeline the law fully supported. The night of the anniversary party, the dining room was full, twinkle lights on the patio, the reporter from the Dayton paper near the bar with her notebook out, my mother in a new dress telling anyone who'd listen how proud she was of her son's restaurant. Tyler tapped his glass and asked me to say a few words. I stood up and didn't raise my voice once. I thanked everyone for 5 wonderful years, and I meant that part. Then I said that since we were celebrating the business's success, it felt like the right time to also celebrate the partner who'd made it financially possible from day one, and I set the folder on the table in front of Tyler and the reporter at the same time. I told the room, calmly, that I was a 30% owner, that I had personally covered every shortfall for 5 years to the tune of nearly $61,000, and that as of that night, I was formally requesting the $54,000 in back distributions I was legally owed. The reporter's pen didn't stop moving. My mother's face went the color of the tablecloth. Tyler stood up so fast his chair hit the floor and said the only thing he could think to say in front of a room full of regulars, that I was trying to destroy everything he'd built. From a table near the patio doors, I heard one of the regulars, an older man who'd been coming in every Friday for years, mutter to his wife, 30% and never got paid once? That doesn't sound like greed to me. Tyler heard it too. I watched it land on his face. I looked at him and said the only sentence I'd planned. You built the food. I built the floor you're standing on. I'm just finally asking to be told the truth about it. Then I picked up my coat and left, because staying in the room to argue only ever benefited the people who needed me confused. The article ran 2 weeks later, a glowing piece about the restaurant's anniversary that also mentioned the family's quiet financial partner and her 30% stake, because the reporter had done her own digging once that folder hit the table. Tyler had to bring in an actual accountant for the first time in 5 years, and what that accountant found wasn't pretty, enough mismanaged cash that he ended up restructuring the whole payroll system just to keep the place open. My mother stopped telling her church friends the story about her son building the restaurant with his own 2 hands. I got my $54,000, not all at once, but on a 12-month payment plan my attorney drew up, and for the first time in 5 years I started actually saving money instead of plugging holes in someone else's leaking boat. The one person who reached out in a way that meant anything was my niece, Sophie, Tyler's daughter, 17 and sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She texted me that night, just one line. I always knew you ran that place. I'm glad everyone else knows now too. We get coffee most weekends now. She wants to study business, and I'm teaching her how to read a balance sheet, the kind where both columns actually mean something. Being needed is not the same thing as being valued, and the people who only call you when something is due will never call you just to ask how you are, not until the day you stop paying and force them to notice the difference. If you've ever quietly carried a family business, a parent's bills, a sibling's mistakes, and gotten a joke instead of a thank you, you're allowed to ask for the truth, even when it ruins the toast. Especially then. If this one hit home, tell me your version in the comments, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight, and subscribe so you're here for the next one.